seeing that world is not at equilibrium, and still we are hoping that things will get settled down as soon as possible. And still there are aspirants who are preparing and using this time very diligently. So for that, with that hope, we are here again, and this time our topic is related with the procedural laws. As we have seen that when we start with the preparation, there are some problems that we face, that how to prepare for it, what should be the strategy to approach the procedural laws, and how to write a particular uh, provision or a section, how to recall it, and how to what we can say, how to beautifully we can write that in our answer sheet during the preparation, right, or during the examination. So for that, we are very excited to have Ms. Sonali Singh, who has recently cleared Civil Judge Junior Division Jharkhand Judicial Services with rank 51. And we are excited to have, and we would love to share your insights and strategies for the same. And we welcome to the webinar of Law Sikho.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you for inviting me here.
Right. All right. So before we get into the interactive question and answer session, we would love to hear about yourself. So, ma'am, please tell us something about yourself, your graduation, and your journey as of now.
So I completed my graduation in 2018 from Government Law College, Mumbai. And post that, I prepared for judicial services examinations. And then this year, I qualified Jharkhand Judiciary.
All right. The same year, right?
Yeah, same year.
Right. All right. So congratulations for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right, ma'am. So please, before we get into the procedural learning, how to get command over it, could you please tell us your journey of Jharkhand Judicial Services from pre to interview?
Okay, so basically these examinations like of different states, there's some fixed pattern which is followed in every state. So basically it happens in three levels. First, you give a pre-examination. Then there's, once you qualify that, then there's main examination, and post that there's interview. So this pattern is same for all the states. What differs is the syllabus and the subjects that differs in different states.
Right. Okay. So, ma'am, when we let's come to the topic. Like, as we have seen that being a law student, when we start preparing for the judiciary preparation, so what we encounter, there are two laws, that is substantive and procedural, right? So when we look at the procedural laws, it seems like to be lengthy, people not able to recall it. So, ma'am, please start with the very basic, like how a law student should approach these procedural laws, and what should be the initial stage or the starting point to approach these procedural laws. Yeah.
Okay. See, so before directly jumping to any of the bare acts or any of the books, I think there are few basic things which every aspirant or any person who's preparing for judiciary must keep in mind. Okay, so the most important thing is you have to remove any kind of fear factor or bias that you have against these subjects, because this personally helped in my case. And when I was preparing, I had similar kind of problem. Even people around me had the same questions, and I think many of you watching must be having same questions. So whenever we start these subjects, we start with the preconceived notion that these subjects are very complex or these are very lengthy when we compare it with substantive laws. और सबसे पहले यही question आता है कि how will we do it? Contract तो हो जाएगा, TPA तो हो जाएगा, but CPC कैसे होगा, CRPC कैसे होगा? So this is the biggest question that we have before starting. So what I learned from my experience is you should start with a positive attitude. You should not have these notions or these negative thoughts in your brain. So when you're approaching a subject or starting it, start with a very positive mind that yes, it is quite doable and it is not as complex as we take it as. So this is the very first thing which I think is very important before starting these subjects. And then I feel the second very important thing is you have to know your limits. As in, when I say these, see, I do not deny the complexity of these subjects, but when it comes to judicial service examinations, then the portions are quite limited. We don't have to write a research paper on any of the subjects. What we have to do is we have to train ourselves, we have to prepare ourselves according to the set pattern of the examination. So for that purpose, we should know where we have to limit, which sections we have to give more focus on which we have to focus less. So this second point becomes very important, that you have to know where you have to give more importance and where you have to give less importance. And then I feel there's the third point which becomes very important is limiting your resources. Because see, in the market there are so like n number of books, then there are so many things available on the online portals, then there are coachings, then there are so many, like you have a lot of material on it. But if you get into all of this, then you will waste a lot of your time, and the time for examination is very limited. So I believe you should restrict yourself to any of the sources with which you are comfortable, and revise that particular source n number of times you can do it, so that becomes more beneficial. So I think these particular three things are very important before diving into the books or the bare acts.
Right. Okay. So like as you said, like when we approach a particular bear act, we should have a limited resource, and we should keep revising each and every whatever we are learning day by day, right, ma'am? Okay. So like when we talk about procedural laws, right? So there are so many provisions in a particular section, right? And we as a aspirant or as a exam, like what we can say, the aspirant, we need to must have knowledge of each and every provision, as you know, as demanded by the exam, by this exam, right? So what should be the strategy of learning these provisions as well as the sections along with, as you are understanding now, like for example there is a big some section, for example under CRPC, एक प्रोविजन के बहुत सारे सब क्लॉज होते हैं, राइट? एंड पीपल और द एस्पिरेंट्स आर नॉट एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड कि अगर हम लाइन वाइज याद भी कर ले तो हाउ विल बी एबल टू रिकॉल इट टिल द एग्जामिनेशन टाइम, राइट? तो वो कैसे करें, ऊपर से सेक्शन भी उससे कनेक्टेड रहता है, तो हाउ टू रिकॉल दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग?
So see, when you start, like after having a positive attitude, when you take up your bare act and you start reading with it, what I suggest and what my personal belief is, like one reading you should give to your entire bare act. You should not leave any provision when you are starting, when you are reading at the first point. Because see, what is important, you need to have an entire understanding of the bare acts, what the law is. If you skip sections in that particular thing, then you are not going to have a whole understanding of the particular subject. So after you are like, once you are done with the entire bare act, the second thing what you can do is you can like always take up the last year papers. This helps a lot, because see, there are many sections, like when we see from the point of view of the pre-examination, there are very small sections which become relevant for the pre-examination, but they are not as relevant for your mains examination. So while you're preparing for your mains examination, if you're going to focus on those particular sections which are not relevant for that particular examination, your mains examination, so that is a complete wasting of time. So I think after having a understanding of it, after reading bare act once, what you should do is you should first take like past 10-year papers, 7 years, whatever is comfortable for you, and you should see a fixed pattern. Because when you go through these papers, you'll notice a pattern in pre-examination from which particular portions they are asking questions. And then when you see similarly, when you do for the mains examination, you'll find particular pattern, like particular questions from which they are asking repeatedly, they are asking questions from particular provisions. So this bifurcation is very important, and you need to develop this, because you cannot like read every section, you cannot remember every section, and every section is not important also. So
Right.
the most important thing is this. So when you're preparing for pre-examination, after like giving one read to the bare act, learn those provisions. Like for example, when we are doing procedure laws, the time limits, the time period, like those becomes very important. Like when we see the time for filing the caveat, or suppose there's any limitation period, when so that particular those times become important. So you need to know what kind of questions from that particular provision. Also, they do not ask entire provision. For example, what like if there's a question on rejection on plane or of return on a plane, what are the grounds? Those grounds are important. So you have to learn those particular grounds. So you have to have that understanding that from a provision, what you need to learn. You don't have to learn everything. So what's important for pre, go for that. Then when I come to mains examination, for the purpose of mains, once you are done with pre, it's over. Now, when you come to mains, jot down the questions, see from which portion they are actually asking the questions again and again. So for that particular like from that particular provisions, you need to go in depth in that particular provisions. And also, I believe when you read the Bare Acts, you should have the capability to bifurcate which sections require more interpretation and which sections you can just understand by reading the Bare Act. For example, say you pick up CPC. All right. If there's a question on section 11, you know that's a lengthy question that may carry 10 marks or that may carry 15 marks question, right? So if you just write the definition of that particular section of what is provided in that section, what is res judicata, that is not going to fetch you marks. Now what becomes important is you need to understand, you need to break the essentials. For example, the essential is directly and substantially in question. All right, so you need to have the understanding of that particular essential. What is that? So for that, you can pick up books, any basic book which you refer to, or you can go back to your like any coaching notes or anything, whatever you are finding suitable or whatever you are keeping it as your base. So for that, for these particular questions, you need to refer to books or something in detail. But then there are also questions like, for example, if you see questions in CPC, for CRPC, for example, if you see in mains question, in mains paper, so many of the times they ask about trials. For example, the question is, many times the question is based on summary trial for that. So for that, you don't need to refer to books because the provision itself is so sufficient that if you just write those provisions rightly, that itself becomes like that itself can fetch you good marks. So this bifurcation and this idea is important, and I think this you develop automatically when you see the past year papers, and then you refer to how many marks it is for, and when you refer to books, you automatically develop this idea. So I think this is very important to understand in doing procedural laws.
Right. So, ma'am, as you said that previous year papers can help us a lot because as we have seen that there are stock questions, they are repetitive in nature, right? Uh, so let's get into like understanding the things. Like when we start with the CRPC, there is this definitions and there are so many provisions as well. So like how to, as you said, interpretation is there. So, for example, if there is a small provision, for example, section 154 of CRPC that is related to FIR. So, when a student, start with the studying, he finds a limited 5 provision in that particular section 154, right? But there are so many interpretation of it, which examiner, expect from an aspirant that they must write it. Like, for example, FIR. What is the evidentiary value of FIR and etc. So how, what should be the approach of studying all these sections along with the interpretation, and कितने extent तक वो interpretation करना चाहिए which can help us in writing mains examination.
So first of all, I would like to add something to my previous answer which I gave. So like with respect to the repeated questions, firstly when I said that you have to go through the entire Vedax, you should never go to the exam hall just with the repeated questions. You have to prepare the repeated questions well. But as I said, you have to give a very first reading to the entire Bare Act. That helps you when a question comes which has not been previously asked. So never go to exam hall with just the repeated questions. Have a wholesome understanding of the Bare Act and do the questions which are asked again and again in a like deeper way, in a proper way. So that strategy should be followed. So never go with just the repeated ones, right? And then with respect to interpretation that you asked of section 154, see, when we section 154 itself, it seems to be small, but it is very important section. Like it basically sets the criminal law in motion. When FIR is something which actually sets it. So, when you see the papers or when you see the questions that can be framed, when you see the evidentiary value, when you refer to such questions, you know that these questions or these information per se are not provided in those sections. All right. So first you need to have a very superficial understanding of the section, what it says, like 154, what it says, what is an FIR, because FIR per se is not defined in it. So then the first question comes, what is an FIR? So where you will find it? Obviously for that, either you will pick up because that is not given in the Bare Act and you need to know what is a FIR, right? So for that, either you will pick up your coaching notes or you will pick up any of the books which you are referring, or you will pick up any of the like online portals or anything. So for that, as soon as you have this question in your mind, as soon as you pick any source, then you'll see there are so many questions like there itself they have dealt with evidentiary value of the FIR, then how it can be used, then whether cryptic message can be used as an FIR or not. So these all questions become very relevant. And I think for understanding, having a deeper knowledge of these sections, book plays a very important role, and they should be followed by any of the students, I think. And also, like, judgments play a very important role. Like when you are doing FIR, you have to read Lalita Kumari case. You cannot skip that. So you have to see what has been laid down by Honorable Supreme Court in that particular case law. So I think case laws, landmark judgments, coupled with your any of the books or your notes, and then if there is any recent case law on it, because see, when you are going for an examination, everybody is coming prepared in that particular hall. Everybody is prepared, but what you need to have, in addition to get selected from, like in addition to be better than other students, you need to have an edge over them, right? How can you, everybody will write 154 is an FIR, everybody will discuss it, but you have to be different than others. For that, what you can do, obviously you can refer to landmark judgments. Then if there's anything in current, if there's any recent amendment, or if there's any recent, say, judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court or maybe Honorable High Court, then you can definitely refer to that, and it will obviously provide you edge over the other students.
Right. So, ma'am, as you said that if you want to get an edge over someone, like everyone is coming with like everyone knows what is FIR and everything. If you wanted to get edge over anything, you must know at least something that is related with current scenario, right? So, ma'am, as like when we start with the means preparation in respect of procedural laws, what we find that, for example, when we take CPC, right? CPC, yes. So like there is lengthy things, as the thing you said, be honest, start with the preparation, stay honest in
Right.
everything. But still, when we start with the mains preparation, CPC, stuck a lot. For example, there is a section or a provision that is related with summons, right? And when it comes in a mains examination, so people get, like they think like what to write. It has so much to write, right? So please let us know the pattern and the strategy. What should we basically follow, right?
Okay. So coming to CPCC, CPC is a bit sorted where act as compared to CRPC, that I believe, because in CRPC you would see the provisions, they are not like dealt in a proper sequence, but I think CPC is a bit like it is in sequence as compared to CRPC, right? So first of all, start with your orders. It's very nicely dealt, and always whenever you are doing a procedural law, see, first of all, when you are dealing with a substantive law, I feel that following a set pattern of the Where Act is not very relevant. For example, if you are doing TPA, for example, all right, if you pick up TPA and you're not willing to start from the scratch, that's fine. Even if you pick up directly, go to end and start with the provisions of gifts, you would understand this, right? But if you're dealing with procedural laws, and if you take up the Where Act and say in CPC, you directly jump to attachment, so you would not understand, because you need to have that flow, that how it actually works, like how first there's cause of action, that there's plain, then there's written statement. So you need to, first of all, you need to study in a proper flow, because when you're studying in a proper flow, then I think like understanding it and attempting any question becomes very very easy. And then the second question which you asked regarding, like, if there's question on summons or say any provision of CRPC, what to write, what not to write, right? So always see, for example, like if there's any question, first of all, understand the question, what it is asking, right? For example, for summons, if it is asking, like, just if there's just a general question, what is summons or how summons is served, right? So you just have to deal with that particular thing, because see, a question, you have to answer to a particular question with respect to the number of marks given. You don't have to overwrite it, you don't have to underwrite it. Whatever they are asking, just stick to that. You can give a just good introduction to it, and you can give a good conclusion to it, but the body of the answer, it has to stick to what they have asked, right? So never overwrite anything.
Right. Okay. So like yes, as you said that according to the marks, we should write our answers, right, ma'am? So like since we're talking about the procedural laws, could we can we start with the like CRPC and later followed by CPC and evidence? Like this is the like very basic question, like how to start with the like procedural laws. For example, CRPC, right? How to do we need to differentiate accordingly? Like for example, post trial, after trial, and there are three bifurcation in CRPC as well. So yeah, please tell us the approach for CRPC. Like when we actually feel like when we start with the CRPC, we not able to understand. We start with the definition part, and we end up with, we see there are so many 484 sections. So somehow we feel like how to do it, right? Either we are taking coaching or guidance, that is a different case. But there are so many students, those who are not, taking coaching, and of course, so like just tell us a bit about the strategy that one should follow in CRPC first, and later we'll go by CPC and evidence. Yes, ma'am.
See, when we are dealing with CRPC, right, there are three major stages. First of all, there's investigation, there's inquiry, there's trial, right? And when we see the WARE Act of CRPC, it is actually not dealt in this particular sequence. For example, after arrest, ideally we should deal with bail, right? But when you see the WARE Act, the provisions of the bail are given towards the end of the WARE Act. So I think in place of just starting with section 1 of the CRPC, like obviously definition part is important, read the definition part, and after that I think you should always start with FIR, because that is the most important thing, and that is the beginning of the entire criminal process, right? So you should always start with the FIR, you should complete the investigation portion, then inquiry, and then you should jump to trial. Because if you directly start with trial, or say directly start with bail, you won't understand what actually the process is. So I think this proper sequence should be followed. And obviously I understand that, knowing, because I have read, so I know this sequence. But in the starting, or initially when I like started with my preparation, I did not know that what is the actual sequence. Or for example, say a student who has not joined the coaching institution, that person would not know what the exact sequence of it. So in that case, I think the books, the basic books which are there, for example, for CRPC, you take Kelkar, is like, it's a good book, I think. And then they have dealt with the topics in that particular sequence itself. They have not dealt according to the WARE Act, rather in particular sequence in which actually this process works. So I think from there you can gather your information, that what is the actual sequence, from where you should start, and which sections are important, and which should be focused and which should not be focused. So I think books really they really make a good base for your preparation.
Yes, ma'am. So there is this question that's coming. Name is Chennai, and his question is like how to recall sections. Of course, is there any trick or something like that?
Okay, so for recalling sections, see, particularly I like didn't follow any trick. What I did is I did a multiple revision. So in my case, revision helped me a lot. So I think anybody who is good with tricks can definitely do that. But other than that, like who cannot like form tricks or something like that, or some short forms, obviously multiple revisions would help. And then multiple revisions coupled with, if you're going for pre, coupled with solving questions, because the number of questions you solve, it will be like very good for your preparation. So I think multiple revisions coupled with your question solving would be very helpful for remembering the provisions.
Right. So, ma'am, let's move on to the another subject, that is CPC, right? So, what we have seen that in a particular CPC, there are so many orders, and under that, there are so many rules. Like, for example, Order 21, right? So, like, on this position, like, I wanted to ask, like, if you wanted to prepare for CPC, right? तो हमें previous year papers को देखना is important, like, क्योंकि Order 21 when we start reading, so we are not able to understand कि 106 rules हमें पूरे पढ़ने हैं, क्योंकि nowadays what we have seen, the patterns that is change हो रहा है judiciary में भी, we have seen that patterns they are changing, because it is not something वो repetitive रहेगा, right? So 106 rules पढ़ना और Order 21 से dealt करना, it's just I'm asking you for an example. So what your insight on it? CPC, yes.
See, for CPC, I would never ask any of you to skip any of the sections or any of the orders in the first go.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I would not ask any of you to skip any of these sections, because see, you should have a complete understanding. So like in the first go, you should read all the important provisions that is given. You should read all the complete orders, all the sections. And when you go about these sections or these orders or these provisions, you will yourself understand that from which section or which order or which provision a question can be framed. Because when we read, we have this habit that this is because we get to know what is important, what is not important. See, if there's any sectioning or feeling that a question can be framed from it, definitely read it. Definitely read it and learn it. And if even if a prior question has not been asked, do not skip it. But on the other hand, if there's any provision where you know no question can be framed from this, and this is just for the procedural purpose or which is to be followed in the courts of law, so do not go into that. Because see, right now what we have to do is we have to prepare ourselves for the examinations. We do not have to know the entire process, because once we are into the training institute, you are going to be taught what has to be done and like what has to be followed. So you just have to prepare according to the exams. And if you think a question can be framed from that particular section, then definitely learn it, irrespective of whether questions have been previously asked or not.
Okay, yes. Yeah, there's this another question that is coming from Rishabh Soni. He wanted to ask, like, uh, in the BEREC itself, we have a language, right? So, do we need to write that particular language into the mains writing, or we can mold it accordingly and just tell the objective policy what that particular provision is wanted to say, or do we actually need to write the BEREC language?
Okay. See, we are never asked to write the BEREC language. I think this shouldn't be followed. Because what is important when you read the provision, you should understand the essentials, and always writing the essential is what fetches you marks. It is not the exact provision. So what you have to do when you read a provision, try to break it into essentials, and then try to explain that particular essentials. For example, if you are dealing with Evidence Act, maybe to take for example, if you're dealing with section 6 of the Evidence Act, right, it is res geste. So if they are asking a question on particular on section 6, and if you just go and write the BEREC language, that is not going to give you marks, because they already know what the section is. They don't want to know that. They want to know your understanding on that particular section. So you have to pick up the essentials of that particular section, right? And then you have to deal with that essentials. For example, when you are doing section 6 of evidence, then the essentials are in the same transaction. So in the same transaction, it itself is a very huge ambit, and there are a lot of things which are dealt in that particular term, and there are a lot of case laws. So you have to deal with them. You have to write the essentials, and if that essential requires an explanation, then you have to give a good explanation to that essential. That's it. You don't have to jot down the exact provision of the BEREC, because that
Right.
would in no way tell your understanding of the provision. That would just tell that, yeah, you have learned it and you have come to the exam and just written and you went away. So you have to show your understanding of that provision.
Right. Right. So I believe that Rishabh has got an answer. As you need not to write a particular, line by line everything. You need to show there your understanding, of course, and the case laws, which is followed by the case laws, right, ma'am? Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Moving further, my next question is that is related with the evidence. How to deal with the evidence? What should be the approach of dealing it? And as we have seen that in CRPC and CPC, we can bifurcate some of the sections that some of them are not important. But when it comes to evidence, I believe that almost every section is important, right?
Yeah.
Like and there is like 167 sections, so how a student should deal with this. Along with that, there are so many case laws as well. So what should be the whole idea of reading and writing the Evidence Act? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. See, in a BEREC, when number of sections are less, then every section becomes important. So same is the case with evidence. Since the number of sections are less, and evidence itself is a very important act, so it becomes very important. So you cannot skip any section in Evidence Act, because a lot of questions are asked in pre as well, and it carries the same marks as compared to CPC and CRPC. So definitely this means every section is important. So in the same way, you have to deal with it. Like, for example, when you're doing Evidence Act, when there's a question of presumption, right? Presumptions are mainly asked in the pre-examination. All this understanding you develop when you see the past year paper. So when you're doing the portion of presumption, you just have to focus on it from the perspective of pre-examination. You don't have to go in depth of it. And when you're doing presumptions, then the words like may, shall, they become very relevant, right? So when you're when you're reading bare acts, interpretation of these words becomes very, very important. So wherever you see these words, may words, shall words, notwithstanding everything, so you have to give focus on these words, right? So you can, like in the from the bare act, you have taken this portion out for the purpose of pre-examination. Now when we see other sections, maybe when we go towards the beginning of the bare act, section 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 up to 14, all right? So these sections, these are very important for your mains perspective. And these are very small sections, just dealt in 2-3 lines, but they are asked in the mains examination. So you cannot just write three lines and come back. Then you know that you have to go beyond the provisions of the bare act, and you have to look for a more source on it. So in that particular case, you have to read upon the upon what that section actually means, and then you have to do the case laws. Okay, so and one very important question which I even faced, and there are people also face this, about the case laws, right? Like how many case laws we need to do, or how many laws are important. See,
Right.
doing a lot of case laws, I think, is not helpful, because you would not get that much amount of time to write all the case laws, right? Neither you would get that much amount of paper to write every case law. So you don't have to do a lot of case laws. But if there's any landmark case law on that particular provision, so if you're doing even 2 or 3 case laws on that particular provision, which are very relevant and which are explaining the knowledge you want to give to the examiner, so writing that case law itself is fine, even if it's one, and if it is rightly explaining what you are wanting to tell, then even one is enough. And if you're writing 4 or 5 case laws which are not relevant to what the examiner is asking, there's no point of writing case laws, I feel. So case laws must be picked wisely, I feel, from the sections, because when you pick up the books, for example, in IPC also, there are n number of case laws, right? You cannot learn every case law. So pick wisely which are actually relevant, which are actually dealing with the point of law, and always try to inculcate those case laws in your answers.
Right. Okay. As like you said that like when we have to yes, ma'am. Regarding with the case laws, we have another question. Do we need to write a citation of each and every case law?
No, see, writing citation is not what they ask for, but if you remember it, then well and good. But there's no need of writing the citation, because they don't want to know from you what is the citation of the case law. Rather, they want to know what is your understanding about that case law, what point of law was dealt in that case law, and how you are relating that case law with the provision with which you are dealing in the answer. So I think that is more important rather than giving the citation. But if you remember, well and good, just go ahead and write it.
Right, because it's not like easy to remember each and every citation. So
Yeah,
if you remember some of the citation, we can write it, right, ma'am?
right.
So right, since we are talking about the procedural laws as well as means writing, so like how to judge the length of your answer, basically. Like in some of the states judiciary, we have seen there's this specified space we get during the mains examination, but in some of the examinations we don't get that space, right? So like how to judge your answer according to the like where you have you know where you have put all the ingredients and everything. And my question is basically how to judge your the length of your answer.
Okay.
Yes, in
See,
in the
for the
procedural law, right?
yeah.
Yes, yes.
So for the states where they have provided the space below the questions, then your work is already solved. You have to limit your answers in that particular space only. But for the states where they have not provided the exact number of pages for particular question, I think for a 5 marker question, because there are usually 5 markers, 10 markers, or 15 markers. At max, there may be a 20 marker, but not more than that, I think. So for 5 marker question, I think writing half to 1 page is sufficient whenever you are writing a 5 mark question. Then when you're dealing with 10 mark question, I think 2 to 2.5 pages is sufficient. By 2.5, I mean the sides, right? Like one side, second side, and half. Maybe you're just the 2 sides or 2.5 sides. When you're dealing with 15 marks question, then 3 to 4 pages is sufficient. And also, you just cannot go on writing. You have to manage that with your time also, because if you give a lot of time on the same question, if you go on writing 5 or 6 pages, you will definitely miss out time for the other questions. right? So you have to limit yourself. And even if your answer is very concise, very crisp, but you are giving every information that is needed, then I think length doesn't matter that much. What matters more is content.
Right.
So I think in any of the questions, you should not exceed 4 pages. I think even for the longest one, maybe for 15 marks or 20 marks.
Right. Okay. So, ma'am, as we're talking about the procedural laws, right? So, this always like this comes up a situation where we got stuck with the comparison thing, as like we have seen that when we study the CRPC, there's some provision that is related with constitution. So, my question is, what should be the approach of starting with whole procedure? Like if I'm a student, I don't know like from where to start, how to start, so I went on section 200, right, which talks about double jeopardy, right, and the related section related article that I'll find in constitution, right. So like how to deal with this, uh, तो इसके लिए डू वी नीड टू हमें पहले से ही सारे लॉज पता होने चाहिए तभी हम कंपेयर कर पाते हैं या फिर like what should be the approach all in all? Yeah, I wanted to ask this.
See, interrelating different acts, I think it's not something which you develop in one day. It takes some time, and you get this. You actually get to interrelate it only when you know all the laws. So for that, you need to have an understanding of all the laws. For example, you know 200, you know section 200, but you don't know article 20. So you won't be able to interrelate it, right? You won't be able to appreciate like how these two sections, one article, one section, how they are working together. So for that, I think first of all, when you're well aware of all your laws, then you would automatically get this art of interrelating. For example, say you are done with your Evidence Act, right? You are done with the Evidence Act in entirety. You have done the confession portion, every portion you have done. Right now, when you are dealing with CRPC, so as soon as section 164 comes and when you read about the confession, it will hitting in your mind that you read it somewhere and that was evidence. So from so this way you get the art of interrelating. And then second thing which helps in interrelating, reading judgments, because when you read judgments are not always based on one particular section, but in that particular judgment they deal with a lot of sections. They deal with CRPC also, they deal with evidence also, they may also deal with constitution. So I think judgment reading even develops the art of interrelating. And the third thing which may help in interrelating or having this art is obviously the books, because when you are reading books and wherever there is importance of interrelating that particular section with any section or any article, then the books particularly deal with that. And the fourth thing is obviously your coaching institutions, because if you are going there, so obviously they would be telling you where to interrelate and where. So I think these four things, it helps you. But do not panic if you don't get this art in one day, because it takes time. Because once you are completely done with law, then you would understand where to relate, how to relate. So if you're unable to do it in the starting months, do not worry about it.
Right, right. So, like as you said that judgment by reading the judgments and by referring books, we can grasp this procedure of interrelating. Of course, like we have seen, like people suffers a lot because they are not able to interrelate it at that particular moment. So, yeah. Like, ma'am, there's another question that is coming. So, could you please tell us something about judgment writing? And with the yes, with the main reference to procedural laws, as you said that when you're writing a judgment, you should know the Evidence Act and everything. So, like, yeah, please let us know about that.
Okay, so when you are doing basically a judgment writing on procedural law, or there's a judgment on a criminal side. So the most important thing for doing the format is basically the same when you do like any kind of judgment. But when you are doing judgment writing, I think the most important thing is knowing the sections properly, knowing the ingredients of the section. Because if you are not able to appreciate that given particular fact with respect to the essentials of the sections, then you are not going to do the correct judgment writing, because you have to frame the charge also. If there is a criminal judgment writing, then you have to frame the charges also. Then only you can put the criminal procedure there. So you need to know what are the ingredients of that particular offense, and then if you are right about the offense, then only you can go ahead with the framing the judgment. So I think very important for judgment writing is because format is something which you would learn. That is not a big deal. For learning format of a judgment writing, is what is important is putting the actually law which you have learned in that those particular facts. So I think practicing a lot of it would help, and then having a good command on the sections and on the laws would help in judgment writing.
Right, right. So like learning the sections and having a practice over judgment writing will
Yeah.
definitely help. So ma'am, could you please tell us that the books which one should refer for procedural laws as well as substantive laws, for example, IPC, Constitution. Like there's this question coming: is there any suggestive book list you followed during your preparations? So could you please tell us?
Okay, see, there's like there are many number of books, so it depends according to your comfort.
Yes, yes, yes,
It
ma'am. I'm
depends.
listening.
Yeah, it depends according to your comfort and your understanding of the books. So basically, I think there are some books which are fine for the subjects. For example, if you are doing CPC, then you can always refer Takwani. If you are doing CRPC, you can go to Kelkar. If you are doing constitutional law, you can refer to J.N. Pandey. So I think these basic books. I don't think books play a like different kind of books play a very important role. What is more important is having a hold of one book and revising it, because more or less every book deals with the same kind of like material only. So I think that's simple. Picking up any book with which you are comfortable and giving in multiple revisions is what important. Even if you're not reading books, maybe for example, there are many students who don't read books. For example, if they are going to coaching institutions, they just do their coaching notes very well. So even if that notes is providing you sufficient knowledge, then it's fine. That there's no need to refer to books also. But
Right.
wherever you feel that your knowledge is not sufficient, which is required for the level of the examination, then definitely you should refer books.
Okay, so ma'am, as you said, that limited sources and repeated revision will definitely help. So ma'am, like as we know that in Jharkhand judiciary there is journal knowledge as well, GK portion. Do we have that?
No, they don't have GK portion for the mains examination.
Okay, okay. So ma'am,
They are
could you
just
please?
basic questions. They are just basic questions in the pre-examination, but in mains they don't have GK portion.
Okay, so could you please, like, you prepared for Jharkhand judiciary itself, or you targeted some other state judiciaries? Uh,
No, I targeted UP and Jharkhand judiciary also.
Okay, so ma'am, could you please tell us something about GK, like how to prepare for it? Actually, there's this question that is coming. Yeah.
Okay, so for GK, I think even GK is very vast. Like I think much more as compared to your law portion. So it depends. First of all, it depends upon the state which you are focusing. For example, if you are focusing Jharkhand, then you know that GK is not playing that important role, right? But suppose if you are focusing on UP judiciary, then you know that you cannot qualify that exam without having a good knowledge, a good hold of GK. So basically, first you need to understand how much GK you need to do for that particular examination. So once you know, for example, say like any state you are preparing for and GK is relevant, what I basically did and what helped and what one should do is Ghatna Chak, if anybody is aware of, or if people, the Ghatna Chak plays very important role. From there, you can do your static, like you can do your history from Ghatna Chakra, you can do your geography, your science, all these portions can be done from Ghatna Chakra. Any day, if you want to go beyond that, then you can refer to spectrum for modern history. But I think Ghatna Chakra does the sufficient work when it comes to Jharkhand judiciary, or when it comes to Bihar, or say UP judiciary. So I think Ghatna Chakra is sufficient for the static portion. Then obviously make Lucent as your base. For like always, Lucent is very important. Then for the current portion, which is very important, it forms an important part of your examination. I think for current, you can whatever suits you. Maybe some people do it from newspapers. You can do it from newspapers. If somebody is comfortable with some apps, online apps, they can do that. If somebody is comfortable with online portals or magazines or anything, you can do that. But I think reading one magazine every month will keep you updated well with the current affairs also. So Lucent coupled with
Right.
Ghatna Chakra coupled with magazine, any of the online portals or newspapers would do your work for general knowledge.
Right, right. Okay. So like our participants would definitely get the sources about the journal knowledge part. Ma'am, the next question that comes to our mind that like during interview, like as we have seen, we are the person who is going to pass the judicial exam is going to become a judicial officer, and the interviewer always expects ki that person or the aspirant must aware about the procedural laws, right? Much of the procedural laws. So, ma'am, like after interview, do we need to like after mains examination, right? Do we need to keep mugging up the procedural laws, or like what should be the approach of like when we go into the interview hall, तो मेंस के बाद कितना प्रोसीजर लॉस पे हमको ध्यान देना चाहिए, that is my question.
Okay. See, for the interview is basically your personality test. All right. They have already tested your knowledge in your pre and mains examination. Right. So they already know that when you are coming for the interview, you have a good hold of substantive law, procedure laws, of constitution, everything. You have a good hold of it. Am I audible?
Yes, actually, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So in interview, they already know that you have come with a sufficient knowledge. That's why you are sitting there. So I think the most important thing about interview is not mugging up the laws, rather working on your personality. Because I personally know students who have qualified even by not giving right answers to some of the questions, and even like even some who have given every right answer, they have not qualified. So basically, you don't have to be like you cannot just be quiet on every answer, but even if you miss 1-2 questions, that works. But what is more important is you need to have the personality, because they are sitting there, they know that they would be training you, they would be teaching you the laws that will actually you would need to use when you are sitting there as a judge. So the most important thing is personality. So what they are judging in you is whether you have that mindset, that personality, that aura to be a judge or not. So I think that's more important. Obviously, you should revise your laws. Like before going to interview, revise everything, whatever you have, because after mains you should revise everything. Because if they ask you, you should never miss basic questions. For example, if they are asking some complex question, if you miss that, that's fine. That doesn't gives a very negative impression. But suppose if they are asking very basic question, like for example, stay of suits, anything like very basic question they ask me, if I'm not giving answers to that, that makes a negative impression. So just revise your basic laws, and just see a little bit of current affairs, because they expect you to be a bit aware of what is going, like what is going on at that particular time. Read that day's newspaper, because at times this is seen that they actually ask what was there in today's newspaper. These kind of questions are even asked. So just see that day's newspaper, have a general idea of what is going around you during that period, and then have a general understanding of your law, and just go with a positive attitude. I think that's what matters the most. Your attitude matters.
Right. Okay. So, ma'am, as you said, like the current affairs and everything. So, ma'am, could you please share your interview questions that were asked during during the examiner during that session?
Okay. So I don't remember all the questions though, but still I would try to gather. So with me, I think they, first of all, the questions are very personal about my educational background and everything. And to me, they ask a lot of practical questions. Like there was this question on section 106 of the Evidence Act. So they pick up questions. So whenever there's any section, an illustration is given with the section. I think that illustration becomes very, very important. Even and for the Evidence Act, the illustrations become very important. So me, a lot of questions were asked from Evidence Act. They picked up the illustration of section 106, and then they asked me, then they twisted the facts of that particular question. They asked me that. Then from the evidence itself, they asked me last seen theory, and I could recall these many questions only as of now, so I can't recall a lot of questions. But I think these questions are asked, like they frame some situations, and according to that, they see how you apply laws, and yeah, so they ask these kind of questions.
Okay. Okay. Seems like they ask practical questions a lot, right? Like it depends.
It
Yes, ma'am.
depends. Yeah, see, it depends. When I gave UP Judiciary interview, they did not ask me any practical question. But when I appeared for Jharkhand Judiciary, most of the questions were practical. They were, and to other students as well, they were framing. They were framing particular situation, and they were asking it. So because when I gave UP Judiciary interview, the questions were very direct, from contract law. All right. So, and from Evidence Act, from IPC. So it was very direct. So it depends. So basically, you need to have an understanding, and the questions are very basic. It's not something very tough or very alien that you won't be able to give the answer to. And they themselves know, if the question is tough, then they themselves know that the particular student won't be able to answer it that nicely. So that doesn't make a huge difference, I feel.
Right, ma'am. So, like as you said, that practicality is also important. So there's this question that is coming that during the law school, is there like it is important to do internship or moot court activities, during the law school, and on the contrary, we are aspiring for judiciary. So, is it necessary to do both, or we should focus over judiciary as well? This question is asked by Akriti.
Okay. See, for those who are very sure, like since the beginning, that they have to do judiciary itself and they want to do nothing else, then for them, I think there's no point of doing any corporate internships or doing any internships. But definitely, if you want to keep yourself engaged in the law school, I feel that you should do internships, like a bit of internships, because you should have the experience of everything. I feel that, because this is what I did, right? So you should do a litigation internship or corporate internship, because law school is a 5 year duration, and you cannot keep on studying every time for judiciary itself, because actually judiciary doesn't require a 5 year preparation, right? So I think enjoy your law school very well. Do research papers, do moots, because this is what law school is about. So I would say do one or two, do not indulge too much into it if you know that it is not going to benefit you a lot for the aim that you are achieving. But then yes, you can always have a balance between it.
Ma'am, yes. So, ma'am, did you start your preparation in the law school itself, or you have started like after finishing up your school? And the next question is that what was your motivation behind choosing the judicial services?
Okay, so for me, I always wanted to judiciary itself, because I belong from the background of judicial officers and lawyers itself. So I always had this thing in my mind. But when I went to my law school, I made sure that I want to experience everything. So I did internships, I did moots, I did research, like I did everything, whichever thing which I could do. Till fourth year, I did all of this. But since I knew that I have to do judiciary only, and I don't want to do anything else. So towards the fifth year, I stopped everything, and then I diverted most of my time towards the preparation of judiciary only.
Okay, so from last year, like you started with the preparation, and yeah, ma'am. One more thing is there, like if, like what I believe, like if there is a student of a judiciary, like who wanted to be in it, they should start with the preparation. Like, we all have seen that we all have these procedural laws in our school, in our law school itself, right?
Hmm.
So like, I believe that school notes and everything may also help, to a student to get into the preparation and everything, uh, because this is very, when we say that, when we start with the preparation, we think that this is new, but there are just FIR and everything is there. So we have already encountered all these subject in our law school itself. So I believe that this law school is something where you should do each and every activity, right? And internship and everything, right? There's this another question that is coming, like during the when we practice the procedural laws. Yes, when we practice the procedural laws, like what should, like when we do a rough writing, तो वो कैसे करना चाहिए
Okay.
at home, like when you start with the means writing practice, so हमें वो पूरा लिखना चाहिए each and every word, or just the ingredients? Yes, this
Okay.
question. Yes.
Main answer writing is very important. Like you cannot go to exam without practicing questions for mains. And I think the right time to practice your mains examination is even before you go for your pre-examinations. Because right now, what pattern we are seeing is that they do not give a lot of time between your pre-exam, after the result of your pre-exam, and then the date of your mains examination. So that particular duration is kind of less to prepare answer writing and to also revise your subjects. So the best time to practice your mains questions is it's like beforehand only you should do. And what strategy you should follow in for like practicing these mains questions, I think you should always do it with a timer. Because divide your time, see the number of questions they are asking, right? See the number of like what time you have. Always leave last 5-10 minutes for the revision of anything is left, anything. So divide your time leaving last 10 minutes and see how much amount of time you need to give to every particular question. Set your timer. Always practice your questions in the limited space. Because if you are like, when you're practicing at home, if you are practicing in 4 5 pages and there you have to deduct it to 2 pages, that becomes a task. You do not have that much time to go there and bifurcate, oh, what should I put now, what should I not put now. So I think it should always be practiced in the way that you are going to produce it in the examination. So always limit your pages, limit your time, read the question properly, and then write it. And whenever you are writing your mains like practicing the questions, I think a format should be followed, that you should give a good introduction, you should discuss about the provision or law, whatever it is asking, then there should be a proper body of the answer and a conclusion. It should follow with a conclusion. So you should always practice your mains answer writing in this particular pattern, with the timing and with the page limit. So, and you would find the first answer may not be as good as the last answer you write. So you don't have to worry about that. Just read the topic, take a page, fix the page, fix the time, and start writing it. And towards the, after writing like 20 30 answers, you would see that your quality is automatically improving. So in the very first answer writing practice, you don't have to worry about the quality. So this is, I think this would help.
Right, right. I hope that that participant has got his answer. There's this another question that is coming, that what should be the strategy that one should follow before examination of revisioning the answers, you know, how to do that? Because like we have seen that there are intervals, you know, like there's this first day exam, there's another day exam. So how to bifurcate your time and how to revise the answers which you have written a day before, you know, an exam. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
See, for when you are going for a pre-examination, before like I would say 10 days or 15 days before the pre-examination, you should be get done with your bare act. Last 10 or 15 days, you should just dedicate to question solving, because there's a lot of difference when you read the bare act and when you solve the questions, because that time you would actually know what is the actually relevant question from the provision that you have read. So I think for last 10 15 days, you should practice the pre questions, past year questions. And for me, I think whenever you are preparing, you should always prepare short notes. That helps a lot in the last moment revision, because at the end, you can't just open up books or your copies and you cannot read everything. So always make pointers of, like, suppose if any, maybe if you are doing, say, dying declaration, any topic which you are doing, just make the pointer notes. What is the provision? What is the section number? What is the illustration? Just in single line. What is the relevant case law? Do not write the entire facts of the case or any word by which you can remember it. So I think, like, in a page, you should be done with like 3 4 topics. In such pointers you should write, such minute pointers. And towards the end of the examination, like 2 3 days before examination, you should just revise those pointers. And for in between the intervals, or like a day before the mains, I think you should just relax, go out, sleep well, eat well. I think that's more important. Just do not take a lot of stress before the last day or between the interval of 2 exams, like 2 consecutive sessions. So do not take that stress, just relax in that particular time.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So the next question, that is how to sustain your preparation. You know, what should be the routine that one should like follow up? For example, like you said, the revision that is very must, and each and every day you should add value to your preparation. Then only one could achieve it. So how to sustain it? Like what we have seen when we done with the like starting 4 5 questions we have written, we just you know lose our vibe, and we just keep on, अब कौन लिखेगा कैसे, अब पेपर में हम याद कर लेंगे एग्जाम से पहले and we'll write it. So is this strategy works, or do we need to keep writing, you know, till the exam? जब तक एग्जाम नहीं आ जाता तो हमें तब तक लिखते रहना चाहिए, या फिर just हमें अपना प्रैक्टिस करके we just you know keep that off?
See, as much as you write, as much as you revise, that would help you a lot. The difference would be shown in your paper and the quality of your answers. So what I believe, how to sustain this preparation period, because the preparation is very huge. Even the vacancies are not that regular, right? So like once you have given one exam, you're waiting the results or maybe waiting for the next vacancy. What I believe is, you should not stop your preparation. Like, you should pick some time of the day and it should be regularized. Like every day you should do it, maybe 3 hours 4 hours or whatever it is. You should do it every day. You should not stop that. And then I think answer writing, as much number of answers you can do. Maybe do not write on the last 3 4 days, I would suggest, because last 3 4 days just revise what you have learned, because before practicing answers it takes a lot of time. So last 3-4 days would not actually help you in that art. So stop answer writing maybe 10 days or 1 week before the mains examination, and in that particular 1 week or last 3-4 days, just revise maybe from the pointers that you have made, or maybe from any like crisp notes that you have, revise from that.
Okay, all right. So like I believe that a person like participant has got an answer. Yes, ma'am. As there are so many questions that are coming up, like about the routine and everything, as you have said it. Right. So like before signing off, let's like before signing off, what would be your views to our participants who are preparing for judicial services, and what the strategies one should follow up throughout, and what should be the motivation of an aspirant, behind preparation everything? Because what we have seen that people have started with the preparation, like thinking of like my friend is preparing, and so I should also start with the preparation. So I wanted to ask uh, a ideal advice for the aspirants who are actually preparing for the judicial service. And meanwhile, I'll ask my participants to rate this session from 1 to 10. And for those who are asking for coaching or any guidance, so we at Law Seeker started with the judicial courses, so you can go there and check out our new courses regarding judiciary. Yes, ma'am.
See, for strategy for a judicial service examination, it differs from person to person. Whatever I have said, maybe it may be beneficial for some, it may not be beneficial for some. So I think you should develop your strategy depending upon your strengths, depending upon your weaknesses. That is the most relevant thing. And secondly, when you're preparing, I think those who are preparing just thinking that somebody else is preparing, I should also prepare. I think that's not very helpful. That might be helpful in the short term, but in the longer run, maybe when you do not qualify in the first attempt and then you are waiting for the second vacancy, so that is the time where you would start giving up if that is not what you actually wanted. So I think you should have some fuel inside you, like why you actually want to do it, why you want to be a judge. So there should be some motive. That motivation may be quite personal because somebody's father is the judge, or maybe somebody likes the working, or maybe somebody likes the fame, somebody likes the likes the position, somebody wants to serve to the society. So it depends, the motivation may depend from person to person, but I believe motivation is very important. Just do not do, even if you have entered the preparation thinking that others are doing, do not leave it. Find a motivation for yourself, I believe, and then with that motivation continue, do not leave in between. And I think hard work is the key to success. Patience is very important, so you should be patient because vacancies are not very regular. Even the results take a lot of time, and everything is it's like the process after starting itself takes 1.5 years. So I think patience and hard work is the key to success. And have a positive attitude, and do not just indulge in books. I would say have your social life also. It's like there should be a proper balance between it, because if you are just into the books, maybe after a point of time you would get irritated or you would just leave everything. So have a balance between your social life, between your educational life, and yeah, just keep on working. I think that would help.
Right, right. So, like the thing which like our participant will definitely loved about that, like before, as we were talking about the how to get commando of procedural laws. So the thing, the first step that needs to be taken care of about the honesty or the positivity, when you're starting with something. So of course, your positivity work, and do not get scared with big books or something like that, because procedure is something which we can find. What we can say similar, as we
Yeah.
can see that in CRPC or in CPC the procedure is almost similar, since we can differentiate in terms of jurisdiction, right? But the procedure is almost similar. So I believe that many of my participants would definitely have got the insight on the same. And there's this last question that's coming from Pradyum. He asked it like 4 times, I guess. Yeah. So his question is how to prepare notes. Yes. Could you please tell us?
Okay, see, preparing notes is again, it's like it depends from person to person, because there are some students who never prepare notes, they keep everything in their mind. There are some who write it. So I think it depends whatever is suitable for you. But definitely, one very like you can say a model pattern which you can follow is always taking out the most important paragraphs, or say most important points from the lengthy books, or from the lengthy notes, and then jotting it down and keeping it in a crisp form. I think that helps. So note making is something, depends how you liking it and how you doing it and in what way you can understand.
Right, right. I hope like Pradyuman has got an answer. All right. So I believe like many of the participants has got their answers. So let's like I'm signing off. So thank you everyone. Thank you, ma'am, for your crucial time you gave to us, and you gave your so good insights to us that how one can start preparing with, and what strategies they should follow, and tricks or trips they can follow up definitely. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us, and
Thank
we'll
you. Thank you for having me.
thank you, we'll meet again with someone special. Yes, ma'am. So like I'm signing off. uh, I'm Bhatnagar, webinar executive. Yes, thank you everyone.